It's a damn shame what the world's gotten to for people like me, people like you. Wish I could just wake up and it not be true, but it is. Oh, it is living in the new world with an whole soul.
Good morning, everyone. Lots going on. As usual, today is October 5th, 2023, and the Liberals send the Heritage Minister out to mislead about internet censorship. I've got a bit of a tweetception to show you. The Heritage Minister is quote tweeting Pierre Poilievre, who is getting quote tweeted, the Heritage Minister, by Michael Geist. And I think they're all worthwhile to look at just from different points of view. So we'll look at them from the point of view of a person who has to deal with these ridiculous laws and knows the truth and not the spin, not the lie of it all. Ottawa police are assaulting peaceful protesters in Ottawa. And up until yesterday evening, actually, I had no idea what was going on in Ottawa, in that they had daily protests from a core group of people who kept showing up and kept protesting peacefully within the law. Yesterday, things changed and the police started getting more aggressive. I'll show you that. Vote about the carbon tax in the House yesterday failed. The Conservatives brought a vote up to repeal the carbon tax, and the Liberals and the NDP voted it down. Jagmeet blames the Liberals for the continued affordability crisis. So that's not great. Food prices up, right? And I've got an Aaron Gunn documentary, thanks Noel for forwarding that to me, talking about how they're crippling fishing and how they're going to use that model to cripple farming. And I don't think he's far off. So I'll show that to you. And you should probably go and spend the time to watch that documentary. It's well worth the time. Russia news for you. I've got India news for you. There's lots to get to, so let's get to it. First, we have to start at the speaker news. We've got speaker news with regards to the US and Canada. The new speaker has taken over and we're rolling with it. And Justin Trudeau, well, it's a good thing he's divorced. This would have caused an Us Weekly Canada controversy. Not really. But the Post-Millennial says, cringe. Justin Trudeau sticks his tongue out and winks at the newly elected Speaker of the House of Commons. I made an awkward face there. Okay, here is that exchange. And it's grimy. It's grimy. Here's Justin Trudeau winking at his new Speaker who's on board, right? Who's going to do exactly what he's told to do. Here we go.
L'honorable Premier Ministre.
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Très honorable.
So the Speaker says, Honourable Prime Minister, and Trudeau says, very honorable. And then he sticks his tongue out in a really snaky kind of way. Yeah. Shivers, and not the good time, not the good kind of shivers, but the kind that kind of accompany a vomit or something like that. You're like, oh my gosh, glad that's over. National Post is reporting, in case you missed it, Governor General apologizes for Order of Canada awarded to a Waffen SS member previously to the one that was just highlighted in the House of Commons. This was done in 1987. I read this morning, so very interesting. Just going off on a small little tangent here, but Governor General Mary Simon is apologizing for an Order of Canada award given to an Alberta man who served in the same Nazi unit as the man recognized in the House of Commons last month. In a statement, Rideau Hall, said it regretted the award given to Peter Savrin in 1987. Savrin was Chancellor of the University of Alberta and President of the Progressive Conservative Party of Alberta in the 1980s. He also served with the Waffen SS, a voluntary Nazi unit in Ukraine during the Second World War. I think there's a lot more to this than we know. I think there's a lot more to this than we're understanding at base. Okay? But it's resulted in a new speaker, and a new speaker that Justin looks at more fondly than, his wife anyway, right? So, yowza. Very, very interesting stuff. And yesterday, after the Canadian speaker was, started again, the American speculation over who will replace their speaker. Now, that slot has been left open for months on end. But while the speaker's spot isn't open, no funding for Ukraine can go because the government's shut down. So things are scrambling from a money point of view, because Ukraine might just implode, but things are scrambling from a point of view to get this speaker installed so they can get the money flowing back to Ukraine, because otherwise Ukraine loses the war, right? And Trump is saying, I'd take speakership to help the Republican Party, but my first focus is on being president. And I've got a YouTube video to show you. This clip is, it's a little quiet and it's a little blurry. So Colin says, Donald Trump confirms from the New York courthouse that he has been asked about becoming Speaker of the House and says he would do it. That would be epic. Quote, all I can say is we'll do whatever is best for the country and for the Republican Party. Okay, so this is the part where he turns around and he starts talking about this. I'll just back it up a little bit because he's talking about it earlier. Here we go.
I'll do whatever it is to help, but my total focus is being president and, quite honestly, making America great again, because we are living in a country in decline. This is a country that's failing badly. We're not respected in the world. Interest rates are through the roof. Taxes are through the roof. Inflation is horrible. What it's done to us, it's eating us alive. Energy is now over $5. I was at $1.87. It's over $5. What's happened to our country with Afghanistan, that horrible removal, the most embarrassing.
I'll do it to help the Republican Party. Now pivot to my presidential stump speech, right? Trump is classic for being able to manipulate the media. I'm going to talk about this one thing, but I'm going to talk about these 10 other things while you're listening to hear about this other thing. But he's addressing the speakership and he says that he would do it. Here's a clearer truth from Trump and on Truth Social. And he says, I'm running for president. I have a 62-point lead over Republicans and am up on crooked Joe Biden despite the Democrat Party's massive lawfare, weaponization, and election interference efforts by 4 to 11 points, but we'll do whatever is necessary to help with the Speaker of the House selection process short term until the final selection of a great Republican speaker is made, a speaker who would help a new but highly experienced president, me, make America great again. So there you go. Trump is not good. If he goes into the speakership position, he won't stay there long because he's got his eyes focused on being the president. Post Millennial is reporting this exchange from the White House press secretary. I thought it was funny. Peter Ducey's asking about, have you guys heard this rumor? Is Trump going to be the Speaker of the House? Here we go.
The meetings about this in the last 24 hours. Has anybody in the West Wing heard anybody talking about the possibility of Speaker Trump?
This is something for House Republicans to figure out. This is something for them to fix. We're not going to get involved in the speakership. We don't care who is in the race or who is out the race. That is not for us to figure out. The president doesn't have a vote. No one here has a vote. They have to figure this out. Okay,
The meetings about.
So there you go. So we don't have any control over this whatsoever at all, period. Brian Cates says, Trump openly having an election stolen from him in broad daylight, not chaos. January 6 people being locked up for years and held without trial, then sentenced to long prison terms, not chaos. A wide open border with human, drug, sex, organ trafficking increasing to mind-boggling levels, not chaos. Printing money like mofos and inflation going through the roof while energy production is suppressed, not chaos. A weaponized Department of Justice, FBI, and local law enforcement indicting a former president 4 times on bullshit charges, plus a fake special counsel investigation after raiding the president's home, not chaos. Federal officials lying to the public with increasing desperation about COVID-19 origins and the vaccinations and masks for going on 3 years, not chaos. Federal government getting caught red-handed illegally censoring millions of Americans by strong-arming social media companies behind the scenes in a massive censorship regime, making use of dozens of well-funded NGOs, not chaos. Shipping the most corrupt regime in Eastern Europe, $120 billion taxpayer dollars, while our country is literally being reduced to a shithole, not chaos. Defund the police. Soros, DAs, and mayors turning their cities into violent crime zones, not chaos. But this guy who kept breaking his word and going behind his own coalition's back to do deals to grease all the right skids so this business as usual could continue, loses his job. And all of a sudden, certain conservatives, including people who are wailing about how chaos has broken out and how outrageous and unsustainable our situation is, they need to shut up. Now, McCarthy was making sure the government stayed open in order to continue funding Ukraine. He made a short-term deal, 6-week deal, to continue funding Ukraine, basically, on the side, and keep the government open. But the government open was secondary to keeping funding Ukraine. So they got rid of him, right? Just looking at him, look at how slimy he is. He's like a used car salesman who sells a lot. He's probably like the number one car salesman because he sells to all the old ladies and they love him. But anybody with sense says, no, I'm not saying old ladies don't have sense, but they'll look at him and be like, oh, he's a nice looking guy. I'm sure he's not going to lead me astray, but he's slimy as all get out. The post-millennial is talking about this. Biden, Russia's to reassure allies that Ukraine funding will continue after the House rejects further aid. That's panic, folks. That is people being worried that their whole thing is collapsing down around them. And I mean, they're kind of trapped there. They're kind of trapped in those positions, right? I think that it's interesting what's going on with Ukraine, Russia, and if the money runs out, and Zelensky says to Canada, do you have $1 trillion laying around? We say, yeah, yep, sure do. It's no problem. We've got lots of money. Russia has noticed also that Canada is not dealing in good faith. Good faith is like you show up in court and you say to the judge, I'm really sorry that I did whatever I did. I'm sorry that I was speeding. I've learned my lesson. I'll never do it again. But then the judge pulls up your social media and shows you the video you made last night of say, F the judge, I'm gonna get out of these charges, blah, 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 whatever it is. Like you're totally like talking crap about the judge in the court and all that stuff. The judge is knowing that you're not acting in good faith. So Russia is making the same conclusion about Canada and, our want for peace and all the rest of it. Here's their statement. This is Russia in Canada. I was going to say Russians in Canada, but this is like the Russian embassy in Canada with a gray check mark, whatever that means these days. It says embassy statement, red exclamation mark. We have noticed a press release from the Prime Minister's office, Prime Minister of Canada's office, following Mr. Trudeau's participation in a meeting with President of the United States of America, Joe Biden, and other, quote, world leaders on Russia and the situation in Ukraine. The phrase that particularly catches the eye is the support for President Zelensky's ongoing diplomatic efforts towards a just peace. Nothing new, but a couple of things need to be clarified. The Canadian government is well aware, and our readers will be interested, that the Kiev regime, by the Zelensky's decree number 679 of September 30th, 2022, it is forbidden to negotiate peace with Russia. No diplomatic efforts can be discussed under these circumstances. So we can't be moving towards peace because that's illegal due to a law enacted by Zelensky himself. Next, back to the Russians' tweet. The regime in Kiev and its puppeteers in Washington and London firmly say that there is no other basis for peace other than the Zelensky format. This format can be described in different ways, but obviously it is unfeasible. Everyone is aware of this, but at the same time, they say that this is the only basis for negotiations, and in general, Russia must be vanquished on the battlefield. Therefore, Russia has drawn the conclusion that these world leaders are not willing to show serious understanding of what's happening, including those who understand but do not want to do so publicly under such circumstances when they want to defeat Russia on the battlefield. Well, we accept the challenge, and in this regard, please study carefully what Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov said during his press conference in New York on September 23rd, 2023. I don't have that for you. I kind of wish I did at this point in time. And last but not least, the future outcome is well known to the West, the painful agony of the regime in Kiev. However, there has always been a way out: the surrender, self-subjugating to denazification process with the full demilitarization and recognizing the right of all peoples in Ukraine to define their own future and identity, including the right of self-determination. So there you go. Very, very interesting. And they're replying to the Canadian PM official account, and it says, today, Prime Minister Trudeau spoke with the President of the United States and other world leaders, blah, 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 blah. I'm going to go get that press conference from Lavrov. Hold on. Here is the presser. It's an hour and 15 minutes long, so I have not watched it, but fundamentally it's going over what I just said. It's got a lot of the statement I just read kind of laced through it. It says, turning to our Armenian and Azerbaijan conflict, he said, what's happening in Armenia and in a number of former Soviet member states is that there's a very powerful lobby, including through NGOs backed by Western states, that are advancing the interests of the U.S. and their allies, and these interests include undermining Russian influence. So it's just talking, and he's talking about how Zelensky's running around trying to get money from everybody, blah, 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 and this is very weak, so on and so forth. So I'm interested to see how the government shutdown in the United States, the replacement of the speaker, the timing of the replacement of the speaker, if that's going to influence Ukraine, and it will, but how much, right? Will just the government shutdown be enough to totally implode the Ukraine conflict because they're out of money? Or do they have enough to stopgap a short shutdown, but not a prolonged one? I think no matter what, this speakership has changed track on what's going to happen on the Ukraine war, because it's changing the track on the U.S. government position on it. But that hasn't changed the UK position or Canada's position. So who knows what's going on. But we have conflicts now among our own nations, among our own G7 internal conflict, G7, G20, whatever it is, partners, trading partners, etc., that Trudeau messed up. And now he's trying to calm down whatever that is. He says here, and he's talking about India. This is Rupa who's got Trudeau talking about India. He says, we're not going to escalate. Trudeau was the one who started this international incident in the first place. We're not going to escalate. Bullshit. He was the one who started it. And now somebody's told him, somebody's called him up and said, hey, you idiot, stop being an idiot. Idiot, potato-faced idiot. Rupa says the moment when realization dawns that India is not the bit player it was a couple of decades ago, but is now a major actor on the global stage and won't be pushed around by a medium power like Canada. Trudeau has jeopardized our whole Indo-Pacific strategy, and likely the Americans have told him to dial it down. Embarrassing, right? So they called him up and said, hey, you potato-faced idiot, stop it. Here's Trudeau trying to calm things down with India.
We're going through an extremely challenging time with India right now, but that's why it's so important for us to have diplomats on the ground working with the Indian government there to support Canadians and Canadian families. We're taking this extremely seriously, but we're going to continue to engage responsibly and constructively with the government of India.
Will we retaliate, and can you confirm that they have asked us to take out 40 diplomats?
We're not looking to escalate, as I've said. We are going to be doing the work that matters in continuing to have constructive relations with India through this extremely difficult time.
So retaliate means India dispelled, repatriated, sent home a bunch of diplomats. So we had 62 and they reduced it down to 20, I think it was. They wanted 21. They wanted 41 diplomats to go home. So that's, I mean, not insignificant, right? And so retaliate would be, we're going to send home diplomats from India too, right? That would be a retaliation, and it would be expected to a degree, except that, again, Trudeau was the one who started this whole thing. And so if he retaliated, if he responded to the repatriation of the diplomats, then he would be continuing the conflict. And so this, again, marks a different turn in the conversation about where this India thing is going to go. I don't know if you can repair that. I mean, these guys did a brutal job negotiating the USMCA, or, you know, the, what was it called? NAFTA. I was trying to remember what it used to be called before the USMCA, NAFTA, right? When they negotiated that, they alienated the US. So India negotiations have been disastrous under this government. They do not know how to do international deals because their virtue signaling trumps any kind of sense that they might have. And I mean, they admit that they don't think about monetary policy. We have a Rhodes Scholar reporter who is not somebody who is a serious financial person in the position of finance minister. And we have somebody who he says that he doesn't think about monetary policy, and the budget will probably balance itself. So, I mean, incompetent is maybe not the right word, because if you say to yourself, I know that finance is a thing, and it's not something that I think about, then it's not incompetence. You're just willfully ignorant, right? Pierre Poilievre is responding to this situation in the chamber. The vote result, CPC motion, opposition motion on carbon taxes, was defeated, 119 yeas to 209 nays. And Pierre Poilievre says the Liberal NDP coalition voted to punish Atlantic Canadians. They voted against axing Trudeau's tax on gas, heat, and groceries, voting for quadrupling the tax to 61 cents per litre. Yep, right? So they don't actually care about Canadians' finances because nobody actually ever thinks about that, ever. Right? The Rhodes Scholar reporter is more interested in manipulating people using money than she is about sound fiscal policies. Here's Pierre Poilievre again. This is an exchange in the House talking about the failure of this bill, I believe. And Trudeau saying, we're not going to take any economic lessons from these guys. Here we go.
Mr. Speaker, you can understand we won't be taking any economics lessons from that guy.
Mr. Speaker, that Prime Minister should be taking economics lessons from everyone. Everyone. This is a guy who said budgets balance themselves right before he doubled the debt. This is a guy who said he doesn't think about monetary policy right before he led interest rates to rise faster than at any time in Canadian history. This is a guy who, up until I told him, didn't even know how much he was borrowing out of the Canadian economy. This is a guy who's doubled the rent, doubled mortgage payments, and doubled the needed down payment. Mr. Speaker, it's about time he took some lessons. Why doesn't he go to the library and do a little bit of studying?
Right, so that's debate in our House of Commons, unfortunately. I mean, it's, barbs and things like that. It's made to make your debate opponent look dumb and so on and so forth. But we don't ever get anything really done, I don't think, right? Like, that's helpful, but not really helpful. David Jacobs is pointing this out. He says, if you don't want to be angry for the rest of the evening, read no further. Canada's debt to GDP ratio is 113%. Our debt is more than our GDP by 13%. So our debt goes over how much the country, the gross domestic product of the country, creates. That's bad. For people who don't know, that's bad. Justin, that's bad. The UK is no slouch at 101%, while Brazil sits at 72.9% and Australia clocks in at 22.3%. Holy cow. Australia's got some nice beaches too, right? Like Jeepers Creepers. I don't know if I could live in Australia. I really like snow. Like, I'm a fan of snow. It's fun, right? But fundamentally, Trudeau and Freeland have stripped Canada of its current and future wealth, according to Dr. Jacobs. And I would agree with that assessment. And he says, here's the link for the economists or the economic deniers and the true anon crowd. I don't know. Hello, everyone. Thanks very much for watching. This is just a short version of a longer show. If you'd like to get the whole show, you can go over to CanadaPoly.com and sign up for a subscription. Just look in the drop-down tab for Shop and Donate and look for subscriptions, and you'll get immediate access to the full show. Love to see you. Thanks for watching, everybody. Have a wonderful, wonderful